This video tutorial is going to talk us through adding a parameterized constructor and maybe a little bit about why, and also just review how to set up and correctly use a deconstructor, which we have not used. So first of all, I've created my class diagram in my comments, and I will often ask you to do that. And so I just use some horizontal bars here in order to demonstrate the class diagram, etc. So if you take a look, this particular example is using a person class, and the person class has two instance fields. Those are the attributes. Notice that I have used the naming convention with an underscore first name and underscore employee ID. That's pretty common in C++ in order to use that naming convention. I also have added a parameterized constructor, and several of you are asking about that, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about a parameterized constructor. So a constructor, remember, is a name has the same name as a class, and a default one has no parameters. The second one is a parameterized constructor. So you have your default constructor, and then you have a parameterized constructor. Why would you want to have a parameterized constructor? The reason for that would be if you have your data when you are creating your object, then you will just automatically fill that data in. You don't have to then use your setters. Setters are also still important though. If somebody changes their name, you're going to want to be able to reset their name. The plus signs in your class diagram mean public, and then we have a new function here, and this is called the deconstructor. We did not talk about that earlier as well. You must have a deconstructor in your C++ programs. The deconstructor is basically used to clean up anything that's left over, basically, and kind of resets things when you're working with C++. C++ does not do its own memory management, so you need to do that. If we scroll down, we'll take a look at the person class similar to what we have created before, or something like it. We did other examples, but this is kind of like your avatar, so to speak. The first name, remember I used that underscore naming, and I'll show you why we want to use that in just a moment. We have your default constructor, and then this is your parameterized constructor. So if I were to be just creating this just to talk you through it, you name it person, and then you have the data type, and I'm going to use first name as my parameter being passed in, and I'm going to be using, actually I'm just going to shorten that up and use ID as the parameter being passed in. Probably shouldn't use it all caps because it's not a constant. And then what's kind of nice about that underscore naming is now I could do underscore first name is assigned first name. And so if I want to pass in my parameters with the same name as my instance field, this is an easy way to do this, and there is no confusion then about which one is my instance field. And then if I set my employee ID, I can just assign it ID. So using that underscore makes it very clear which variables are my instance fields throughout the entire code. I'm going to delete the one that I had in there before, and then we're going to show you the deconstructor. The deconstructor right here is you use a tilde, which is above the tab key, and then it's just the name of the class, empty block, and then a semicolon in order to create your deconstructor. This particular code shows a employee being created using the first default constructor. So if I look up, my default is the first name is Fred and an ID of 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I print out that first name, I should get Fred, and then I'm going to reset the name to Barney. And then we're going to use the parameterized constructor when I create employee 2. Wilma is going to be employee 2. So let's take a look at the results from this execution, which is on my other screen. The results are Fred, which was my default, and then we changed the name to Barney. And then employee 2 is Wilma with an ID of 9876. And so code executed correctly. This example shows you, number one, how to put a class diagram into your code when I ask you to do that. Number two, it talks about the naming used in C++ frequently where you use an underscore with your instance fields. 3, we talked about a parameterized constructor and how to set that up and why you might want to use that. It also makes reading data in from a data file and filling in your objects easier if you have a parameterized constructor. And lastly, we talked about you must have a deconstructor in your programs. The next video is going to show you actually what this comment statement is up here. We're going to talk next about doing separate implementations in a class. So far, this is all you've been introduced to. The class is first, and then your driver. We're going to talk about what we're going to do next in the next video.